For a long time, there have always been people online asking, hey, why don't we ever talk about these minor auxiliary stars like Tian Xing, Yin Sha, Tian Kong, and so on? When it comes to the structure of the Zi Wei Dou Shu chart, it's still mainly focused on the main stars and the key positions. So are these minor auxiliary stars useful? Of course they're useful, otherwise they wouldn't be included, right? But you absolutely can't use just one of them on its own. They must be paired with the main stars to have any effect. First, everyone needs to understand that in ancient texts, these auxiliary stars are referred to as miscellaneous stars. In fact, the so-called Jia, Yi, Bing, auspicious stars that are popular nowadays never actually appeared in the original classic texts. This kind of classification only started to appear around the 1960s when some teachers began using this system to help people understand the hierarchy of these auxiliary stars. In the ancient texts, they were simply called miscellaneous stars. So why don't we use terms like Jia level or Yi level stars when teaching? It's because if you use the Jia, Yi, Bing, Ding classification approach, it's possible that because we ourselves associate Jia, Yi, Bing, Ding with a certain hierarchy, we might easily misinterpret it. To the influence of this new drug, that's why I prefer to go back to the most basic terms like primary, secondary, and miscellaneous drugs. For example, a new drug like INSAT belongs to the category of miscellaneous drugs. So what are miscellaneous drugs? You can think of it like this. Under the primary and secondary drugs, there are some additional elements or situations that get added in. It's kind of like this concept, just like a car mainly needs an engine and wheels. So what are miscellaneous drugs? They're like the things you add to your car to give it your own style. But no matter how much you paint a Ferrari to look like Hello Kitty, it's still a Ferrari. It won't turn into a cartoon car just because of that. So when it comes to using miscellaneous drugs, I hope everyone can understand this point first. Next, let's talk about the Yin Sha star. Why do we need to discuss the Yin Sha star? Because Ghost Month is coming. As soon as the 7th month arrives, ever since I started my business, and also according to many current folk experts, they all remind everyone about this. Actually, Ghost Month is really a time for gratitude. In my forecast for the 7th month, I specifically mentioned to everyone that around this season, in the areas along the Yellow River and Yangtze River, as well as places north of Taiwan, people are already getting ready for the harvest. In just a few more months, it will start to get cooler, and they'll begin preparing for winter. Whether or not they can get through this winter, well, depends a lot on this period right now. It's very important. So in reality, the 7th month is a month of gratitude. However, nowadays, the 7th month has already been turned into what we call Ghost Month. There are all these stories about wandering spirits and all sorts of scary things. If you don't make proper offerings, the spirits might come looking for you. But in fact, Ghost Month isn't necessarily like that at all. Relatively speaking, the Yin Sha star isn't something that, if it's placed in your life palace or any particular palace, you'll be affected. It's not like that. All of these minor stars, in fact, need to interact with the main stars to have any effect. Only when they interact with the main stars will they have an influence. So for the Yin Sha star, there have to be certain conditions met. What it means is that you have the chance to encounter these so-called wandering spirits. What are those conditions? The first condition is you yourself are more likely to sense the presence of these spirits in real life. Yes, these so-called spirits actually coexist with us in the same space. It's just that we can't see them. Or when the sun is very strong, they feel uncomfortable, just like how we prefer to stay in the shade when it's sunny. They are more likely to come out at night. So the first requirement is that you yourself need to have this sensitivity. You are able to let it come close. If you don't have this ability at all, then you simply won't encounter it because you're like an insulator. So what kind of people have this ability? We need to look at their astrological positions. If their life palace or bliss palace is in the Buddha's sector and there are inauspicious stars present, then they have this condition. Those 4 inauspicious stars all refer to people whose inner emotions and feelings are beyond their own control. In class, we often tell everyone that, for example, when the Hachin Yang star and Mars 0 star are placed in the palace of fortune and virtue, people like this usually have a stronger 6th sense. Of course, the life palace also represents your emotional side. When this is heightened, you're more willing to receive what's now popularly called messages from the universe and to pick up on issues related to your own emotional perception. People who are highly rational won't see a dark room and immediately feel afraid or think there's something there. But those who are more emotional might look at a dark place and feel it's unsafe, so they'd rather not go there. That's basically how their logic works. The second point is, you need to have peach blossom stars in your chart. And to be precise, these peach blossom stars actually refer to a few specific stars like Taiyin and Lianzhen. But Lianzhen by itself isn't actually considered a peach blossom star. When does Lianzhen count as a peach blossom star? Lianzhen only counts as a peach blossom star when it appears together with other peach blossom stars. So here, what we're referring to are only the specific combinations of Lianzhen with Zhumen, Lianzhen with Tanlang, and Lianzhen with Poujun, as well as Lianzhen with Tian Xiang. As for the other combinations involving Lianzhen, relatively speaking, their influence is much weaker. I can't say that you have none at all, because you will still be affected by the influence of the current fortune cycle. What else is there? The Tiantong star. But as for the Tiantong star, when Tiantong is paired with Zhumen, there can be emotional issues. When Tiantong is paired with Tai Yin, because it is influenced by the yin nature of Tai Yin, and when Tiantong is paired with Tianlang, is that possible? When Tiantong is paired with another Tiantong, it depends on the situation of Tianlang. If Tiantong is paired with another Tiantong and there are enough inauspicious stars present, then of course it's also possible, or when Tiantong and Tiantong are in opposition to each other. Among the previous combinations, Tiantong with Zhumen or Tiantong with Tai Yin are more likely. What else? The Tanlang star. Tanlang is known for strong romantic tendencies, always wanting to try everything, so it's more willing to meet more people. What else? The Tianxiang star, Tianxiang and Poujun in the company, both of these are also considered romantic stars, so that's possible too. Especially in the case of Lianzhen with Zhumen, could Zhumen be considered a romantic star? In the system of stars, those that belong to water are generally not considered romantic stars. For Zhumei stars, you have to consider the sun. If it's in a strong position, that's fine, but if the sun is in a weak position, then your Zhumen will tend to be more like weak flowing water, and when the killing star appears, it becomes easier for certain things to happen. Alright, so with these new star combinations plus the Sha star, you also need to place them in your Feud Palace, Ming Palace, or Jile Palace, and finally add the Yin Sha star as a supplement. Only in this way does it indicate that you have a chance to encounter it. It means you have the opportunity to come across it, and this is called innate constitution. Oh, and I later realized that our viewers on the channel are all really high quality. You all want to listen to very professional content. Wow. Speaking of professional content, let me do a quick survey. Would you all be interested if we started a paid membership channel where we could directly talk about some of the techniques that we cover in our courses? If you're really interested, we'll consider launching a members-only channel. What kind of topics would you like me to cover? You can also leave a comment below. Now let's get back to talking about this vocal hoarseness. So you want to make sure you have this prerequisite first. After you meet this prerequisite, you also need to see whether you actually encounter it. So how do you know if you'll encounter it? The first requirement is that you must look at the monthly and daily charts. Of course, sometimes the annual chart, the life palace, the fortune palace, or the travel palace might also be involved. Is it possible for this to happen at home? Like something suddenly appearing in your house? Of course, it's possible. In that case, you'd need to check if there are signs in the annual property sector. And if your monthly life palace or life palace moves into that area, then this kind of phenomenon could occur. When you hear about this phenomenon, some of you might start to feel, wow, this sounds so complicated. If it feels complicated, it actually means that it's not easy for you to encounter this kind of thing. But what about people whose natal chart doesn't have the situations I just mentioned, yet they still say, but teacher, I often run into these things. Is that possible? Of course it can happen too. So if you're not in the situation we just talked about, then there's another condition. You might have a religious inclination. For example, if you have stars like Lianzhen, Tanlang, Yin Sha, or what else? Tianwu paired with Huagai and Huaji, or Shaxin. That will make you naturally more interested in religious matters or the supernatural world and more willing to get involved. Of course, this also means you're more likely to encounter good things. So you need to have these qualities first for it to be possible. Otherwise, that Yin Sha star, actually, in all the different positions, it really only represents one thing, having ghosts in your heart. In our own Zi Wei card deck, the image on this card is a deep, mysterious camera with many ghostly hands around it. When we teach the cards, we tell students that just because you draw this card doesn't mean you've encountered a ghost. For example, if a student says, teacher, I want to ask about a girl I've recently met, and then draws a Tanlang card along with a Yin Sha card, does that mean he's met a ghost bride? Of course, we wouldn't interpret it that way, right? Here, in fact, most of the time when the Yin Sha star appears, it refers to a sense of unease or doubt in your heart. In other words, having ghosts in your heart. It could mean there's a little voice inside you, or you're wondering if something might happen, or even suspecting that someone might be out to get you. It's more about situations like these. So the true meaning of Yin Sha is actually this. In reality, there's a certain condition that needs to be met for you to really encounter it. If that condition isn't present, then the Yin Sha star in each palace actually just refers to that sense of insecurity within you, that inner suspicion, doubt, speculation, and mistrust. So there's no need to worry. For example, if in July your travel palace has Yin Sha, you don't have to be overly concerned. Maybe, as we've said, you just have a lot of these feelings inside. These Sha and so on inside. So is it possible that this just happens to coincide with this year's lunar July, when the celestial phenomenon is Huaji. Huaji represents a state where rules are broken, where the heavens cause many established rules to be disrupted, old systems to be dismantled, and old norms to be broken. Therefore, it's true that this July there will be a relatively high level of insecurity and instability. Whether or not you actually witness it, perhaps it's just that your spirit is affected. After all, the entire 7th lunar month is a time when people's hearts are easily unsettled. If you're really worried, then our suggestion for you is during the 7th month. You can visit large temples to pray and walk around and try to keep your home as bright as possible. Also, avoid piling up clutter. There's no need to worry about the Sha star. I hope everyone can have a smooth and peaceful 7th month.